speaking of impressing people, I watched this movie over the weekend, and it was about the daredevil, the stunt daredevil, Evel Knievel. Have you ever seen? Okay, if you're my age, you definitely know who Evel Knievel is. Okay. But it's funny because I did a story. Well, I did a what's it called, a biography on Evel Knievel when I was probably in like fifth or sixth grade, I want to say. Um, so anyway, long story short, I needed something to talk about today, and this movie came up on my radar over the weekend, and it's a movie that Johnny Knoxville of Jackass fame put together. So it's really his kind of project, but I thought it was really cool for a lot of reasons. Number one, I didn't really ever think about this, but Evel Knievel was kind of the precursor to extreme sports, really, like skateboard jumping, bike jumping, all like motorbike, motocross, all that kind of stuff. Really kind of didn't exist before him. And I didn't know this at the time. You like my check this out. My mindless self-indulgence coffee cup. Have you ever heard this band? Great band. And it says, "I like my coffee black, just like my metal." And this is, in fact, black coffee. But back to the subject at hand. Evel Knievel. I want to show you this little piece because hopefully it doesn't get me taken down. I'm not going to show too much of this, but just this little intro piece, I think, almost like a trailer, sort of, to give you an idea what this was all about. But it really got me thinking.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Tonight, we have Evel Knievel. He's probably the only man in history who's become very wealthy by trying to kill himself. It's true, he is somewhat of a legend. He does incredible stunts with motorcycles, and he has broken, I guess, more bones than anybody in history. And yet he keeps at this. So let us meet the gentleman. Here is Evel Knievel.
Look at this guy.
I grew up in the 70s, and Evel Knievel was the 70s. He captured my imagination like no one else.
Some of you may have seen this film before. This was a jump that you made at Caesar's Palace. What happened?
The motorcycle landed short, ripped the handlebars out of my hands, and I bounced for 60 yards into the Dunes parking lot.
God, you're an incredible man.
I didn't think of him as a daredevil. I thought of him as a superhero. No one ever went for it like that before. He invented that. Since then, it has taken off in a major way. That's such a large part of our culture now. He inspired all that. But there'll never be another Evel.
I know I've been called a lot of things by a lot of people, a crazy man or con man. But when you head down that long white line, you better have had made your peace with God, and you better know what you're doing, because a con man ain't going to get there.
I didn't know the story of the man. And it was, you know, pretty complex.
California judge has ordered motorcycle stuntman Evel Knievel to serve out the rest of a jail sentence behind bars.
I'm a grown-ass man, and some of the stuff is tough to reconcile. It's a crazy story. It's just fast, faster, and disaster.
So I don't want to ruin it for you, but I wanted to set that up for you so you could check it out, because that is a very cool movie. And I had forgotten how, what a gangster this dude was. This dude was on another level. I mean, he basically crashed bikes for fun, like for a living. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he landed a lot. And but the story was, it's one of those things where you kind of think, I was scrolling through YouTube, whatever, and I went, oh, Evel Knievel, this could be interesting. I started watching it, and I just was like there. I was in it for the whole thing. So it's worth checking out. And Johnny Knoxville does a great job of putting it all together, but it is a very complex story. And it's crazy how, so this guy, he's one of those dudes who is just a badass from the time he's a little kid. He's like, there's this story that his brother tells of him, like hitting him, and then he runs and crashes into the wall, and he's like, you can't hurt me, no one can hurt me. And he ends up like, they have his wife, who she tells this story about him. Basically, she was under, like, back in those days, she was like underage. She was like 15 or something when he grabbed her, and she's like, he basically kidnapped me. He basically just grabbed her and threw her in a car and was like, you're going to be my wife. Boom. And then took her and got married to her. It's like one of those frontier stories. But the guy was born and raised in Butte, Montana. And I didn't realize, Montana, but they go into kind of the history of Montana and Butte at the time. And it was a tough town. It was like, it wasn't the hood. It was like the white equivalent of the hood, where like people just beat each other's asses all day and everyone's dirt poor, and a mining town, with a bunch of tough guys. And that's what he came out of. And so they talk about how the cops would chase him and stuff, and could never catch him. They even interview one of the cops, the Butte cops, who's like, yeah, I could never catch him because he was on a bike and I was in a squad car, and he could go places that I couldn't. So but then he ascends to this point where he's like such a celebrity that he's just got like women and money and all this stuff, and then he's like, I'm gonna jump the Grand Canyon, and it gets so wild. And of course, he doesn't jump the Grand Canyon. He ends up doing the Snake River Canyon in Idaho, because they won't let him jump the Grand Canyon. And they build like a rocket propelled bike to get him across, because a regular bike is not going to make that jump, right? I don't know. Maybe if they built a ramp that was high enough, it could. But just thinking about that is crazy. But anyway, the whole story is just crazy. And then, of course, his son Robbie Knievel kind of follows in his footsteps and ends up becoming, something of a motorcycle daredevil himself. So, it's a great show, and it just it's one of those things where, the way the world is right now, it's like one of those things that it's kind of cool to celebrate that sort of American, tradition, I guess, of being a daredevil or